أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. So we always, before reading the Holy Quran, we seek refuge in Allah from the cursed Satan and all of his influence and his allies from amongst human beings and jinns. And we begin always in his remembrance and his honor and his gratitude. And we praise him in abundant praise. And we seek peace, blessings, and mercy to be sent on his final messenger. He sent to mankind and all those who would follow him until the day of judgment. We're talking about today some what you call asbab al-nuzul, circumstances of revelation. Are all of you familiar with this concept? Anybody here not know what that is, circumstances of revelation? Okay, good, mashallah, alhamdulillah, scholars. So what happened was, over the 23-year period of the Prophet ﷺ's message that he received, there were various occasions. Now, let it be known, for sure, there's no question, not every single verse of the Quran had a circumstance that Allah was responding to. But there are many books that have been gathered with different hadiths with varying authenticities and so forth about events and the ayah that was revealed concerning that. There's two quite amazing things about this science that, well actually three if you put in the contextual understanding, but there's two pretty prominent points here that we need to look at. Number one, what's interesting is that some of the things that were revealed, it seemed very clearly to be responding to a very specific situation, and it solved the issue. But that ayah, if you did not know the circumstances of revelation now, and you look at where it fits in the Quran, it could be applied to hundreds of other examples. This is one of the miracles of the Holy Quran. This is clearly one of the miracles of the Quran. Using language in a way that carries broad significance and potential guidance for various circumstances and people. The second thing that we'll really see today is the amazing level of what we call in Arabic istijaba, the response of the Prophet ﷺ's companions when they learned the Quran. Like when the Quran was revealed, how they responded, their attitude. And when we look at that, we learn, we really take two big lessons, okay? The first lesson we take is how strong those people believed in the Prophet ﷺ. If you had any doubt in your mind, which nowadays a lot of people have doubts because the world is now pushing doubt about God and religion. That is a system of the world. It's like embedded in curriculums of mainstream school and politics and entertainment. It's there, okay? So back then, they didn't really hear of anything called prophethood. They don't know anything like that in Arabia. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's coming with this message. These people, what it meant to believe in the Prophet, it meant to put yourself in harm's way. You had to basically compromise your family comfort, your status of wealth, your status of safety in society. People were abused and humiliated simply because they said God is one and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was his messenger. Simply because of that, they were abused and humiliated and tortured and all of that. So when we see how the companions, when the ayah came, immediately they jumped to follow it. So that's an amazing thing that we learn from that. The second thing we learn is we look at the value that you can learn about context of the Quran. So when a vague verse is there and you don't know what circumstance it was revealed under, you might misapply it. So it is one of the sciences of the Quran to know and learn the circumstances of revelation, particularly and specifically if you are going to believe an actual belief or you are going to practice a type of worship or law. You need to make sure you have a very comprehensive. If you're going to take general moral guidance and character and manners, all ayahs and everything's meant for that. Good guidance to good actions. When you take good, we know good from bad by fitrah. The Quran will emphasize and guide and structure. But when it comes to law or creed, you need to understand the clarity before you take big decisions. And that's why we have this beautiful legacy of scholarship. That Orthodox Jews had it. Catholics had it, but the basis was very much people and their random understanding, spiritual, mystical understanding, and then they collected those things. Whereas we were always a scientific, methodological community when it comes to theology and law. So the first one I want to talk about is the verse we talked about today. It's right there at the beginning. It's the story is that there was a new convert from Ghatafan, which is a tribe outside of Mecca, and a brother had converted from there, mashallah. He had made his migration to Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ is there, and he had his nephew died, and when his nephew died, he was just married and he just had a small boy. So he took his nephew's son in as an orphan, and obviously what came with him was inheritance from his father. Okay? So that was there. And so he took him in, and this boy grew up in his house, and he was a decent father figure for him. And then when the boy became mature, 15, 16 years old, he said, well, now I believe it's time for me to worry about work and to try to build my life and get married and all those good things. So if you could please give me my wealth, I would appreciate it. The man said, no, because the Arab tradition or cultural reality of the tribal society was that, no, I don't have to give you that. I've been taking care of you. It's like some sort of payment for taking care of him, right? So they went to the Prophet ﷺ and they talked about their problem, and right then and there the ayah comes. وَآتُوا الْيَتَامَى أَمْوَالَهُمْ وَلَا تَتَبَدَّلُوا الْخَبِيثَ بِالطَّيِّبِ وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَمْوَالِكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ حُوبًا كَبِيرًا. Give the orphans their right, their wealth, and do not mix filth with goodness. Do not put their wealth into your wealth and now make your wealth impure with this huge sin. Huban kabira. Hub means like to turn completely away from God. A major sin. This became a major sin right here in this ayah. So then the man from Ghatafan, who's a new Muslim by some time, he immediately said, I have obeyed ata'atullah wa rasul. I have obeyed Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he immediately called for the wealth to be given to this orphan. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever would respond to the ayah like that, hallahu Allahu dar, right? Allah has planned for him a place in heaven. This istajibu li rabbikum, right? The Quran says that in so many places. Istajibu lillahi wa rasul lima yuhyikum. Answer the call of God and His Messenger, which will give you eternal life. So this idea of immediate response of obedience, then the Prophet ﷺ told the man, you're going to be a person of heaven. Because the Prophet ﷺ dealt with other people who were not like that. Particularly Bedouin people, as the Quran says. Right? Al-A'rabu ashaddu kufra wa nifaqa. It's in the Quran. I'm not being rude or racist. This is what happened. A lot of that crowd, they're generally not civilized, and that's why they call them Bedouin. So this man was just immediately responding to belief. Guess what the boy did? What did the young man do? He gave it to the poor people. He gave it to the poor people. Immediately. Allahu Akbar. Look at this. The khair, the goodness. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. The Quran says, compete in good deeds. Like one time, I was trying to encourage this brother. I said, okay, I'm gonna do this, inshallah. Let's see what you can do. He was like, brother, that doesn't sound right. And I was like, it is actually. Abu Bakr and Omar were doing like that. By the way, the Sahaba used to do like that. They would push each other. They would try to do better. When one did this, to compete in goodness. Now, if you compete in goodness thinking yourself superior or better, then all of it is lost. But if you do it seeking a means to push you to do good, that's awesome. I remember when we were studying at Islamic American University, and there were 7 of us, because one brother who owned a home there, unfortunately, he decided to move back to Saudi. It was 2003, so post 9/11, he said, I don't know what's going to happen here with Cheney and Bush and these guys. So he moved, but he gave the house to Islamic American University as a dorm. It was a nice home with a basement and 2 stories with like 5 bedrooms, mashallah. So there were 7 of us, and we were living there. We had a competition, who's going to get up for tahajjud, and who's going to get the other people up, and we used to keep track. And then who's going to take everybody to Fajr in the morning. And we only lived like a mile and a half down the road, mashallah, ICD, mashallah. So that is perfectly okay. Now at first, when there's new people, and they're not used to this, and you're, banging on their door at 5:30 in the morning, because in Michigan the time gets really low actually. You're like 4:30 sometimes. So like, brother, get up, man. Taqillah, ya habibi. Allah is waiting for you. So this is good stuff. So the famous ayah, لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها or karha. I think it's actually, there's both riwayahs. So Abu Qais al-Ansari, he died in Medina. And his wife, Kabisha, is there. And his son, Hassan, said this was a practice. I'm telling you, if you learn about the things the Quran solved, and there's many of them, of Arabian standard beliefs and practices of the way to deal with things, you will see the vast transformation of uncivilized and backward to civilized and law-abiding citizens. So Hassan, the son of Abu Qais, threw his robe. When he heard his father has died, he threw his robe on her wife, on his stepmom, or whatever I think it is. And so now he is saying, she's mine. This sounds very strange, right? This was normal. Okay? And then he told her, because this was the culture, he said, look, I really don't have any desire to keep you as a wife. But with this big inheritance and the money you have had, ممكن تفتري بنفسك. Wallah, it seems like it's actually like being a prisoner. You can pay me and then I'll divorce you. You hear these ayahs in the Quran, لا تضاروهن and so forth. Don't hold them and cause harm or offend women and keep them in a marriage in some sort of abusive way. Some people think that just means, well, the man has bad character and he's verbally or physically abusing, which is obviously covered in the ayah. But actually what was also covered is systemic practices of the tribal system of Arabia that was doing that to women. And they could not do anything. They had no way. There was no escape from this oppression. So then the woman went to where? The Prophet ﷺ. Even though, now this is the point, even though that was her culture, and most women would have said, this is my reality, I have to deal with it, that's the way things are, that's who we are as a people. She knows dhulm, she's been Muslim. So she goes to the Prophet ﷺ, she said, this is what, Hassan has decided for me. So now the Quran comes down, and it says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ أَن تَرِثُوا النِّسَاءَ كَرْهًا. It is not, O you who believe, it is not allowed for you to inherit a woman against her will. That's how the verse says. So what it was doing was abrogating this whole thing that the awliya of a man who died, starting with his sons, or brothers, or uncles, the custom of Arabia was, they can just claim his wife and she has no say. Then Islam said, no, she has an iddah, she has a mourning period, and then after that, whoever she wants to marry, it's her business. That's how it became after this. She had the freedom. And this was, the attitude was there as well of marrying a woman against her will. And by the way, we have to understand something. In many cases, the culture of an arranged marriage is not forcing someone to marry someone, by the way. When it is, it's wrong. But if that's the accepted custom and norm, and everybody's comfortable with that, just because that's not our culture, we cannot say that's wrong. because this is a contract that they are content with amongst them. But it happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, going back to our point about the reality of the change of these people's thought process. They became new people altogether. So, on more than one occasion, there's like 3 different hadiths from 3 different women. One of them, the young lady comes to the Prophet ﷺ and she says, my father has married me to my cousin, and he didn't ask me about that, and seems unfair. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, well, if you're not okay with that, then we should annul the marriage contract. She said, actually, my cousin's a pretty good guy. I know of him. I'll stay married. I just want to make sure if it is my right or not. And in another hadith, it actually happened. She said, my father has married me to this guy. I don't know who he is. I don't like him. And he didn't ask me. And then he said, okay, that marriage contract. And then he told the people. In the famous hadith that's mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim and all that. That al-bikr idnuha sukutuha. Meaning, you have to say to her, I'd like to marry you to so-and-so. If she says nothing, then that means she's permitting it. Meaning, if she says something, what? No. Which means the Prophet ﷺ is saying, if she said, I don't want to marry that guy, what should you say? Well, let's find somebody else. Right? That's Islam. That's mainstream, proper Islam. So let's make sure we have differentiated between the allowed culture of an arranged marriage when everybody's comfortable with that. That is not haram, even though in American culture or other cultures, it's seen as some strange, bad thing. Right? But for a Muslim family who that's their culture, that's the way they do things, and they're okay with it. Nobody's thinking this is oppression or bad. We cannot blame or judge them based on our culture. We could say why we wouldn't do that, and that's fine. That's your right. So that abrogated that. The next one is pretty intense. So you know the story of Khalid ibn al-Walid radiyallahu anhu, right? So he was a very tough man, and he was a very well-respected noble of Quraysh. And he chose to fight and attack and kill Muslims all the way until like almost 2 years before the Prophet ﷺ passed away. But he took Amr ibn al-As and went up to Medina before Fath Mecca, by the way. This is a very important point. Because some people, and scholars tend to avoid this, but some people, rightly so, feel like a lot of people in Fath of Mecca decided to become Muslim because that was cool. That became cool at that point. That was popular. Everybody's doing it, right? So Khalid ibn Walid went to the Prophet and said, after all of this, I just, I'm gonna embrace you as the messenger. There's no other way to explain you after all of this. So Khalid ibn Walid, the Prophet immediately used him as an army general. What else would we use this man for? That's what he does. So when the Prophet ﷺ is dealing with some of the tribes like Ta'if and the Byzantine Empire and all of that, he would send Khalid in a military expedition to basically secure the lands and to be sure that no one's invading, knows there's no threat to the Muslims and all this. So one time the army was there and Ammar bin Yasir was with them. Now you know who Ammar bin Yasir is? Everybody know? Let's just remind some people who might not know who Ammar bin Yasir is. So Ammar bin Yasir was one of the first 10, 15 Muslims that embraced the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca. And his mom, Sumayya, was the first martyr. He watched his mom and dad killed. They took a spear and put it up through his mom, right in front of his eyes. And he went through so much torture and abuse, and he left everything, and he went through poverty and all that, and he was a devout follower and a very devoted student of the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ for so many years, before Khalid. And he was a slave. He was a slave previously. So what happens are, they're on this mission, and Khalid sees what looks to be like some sort of a Quraysh allied caravan that maybe is celebrating a wedding, and he thinks it's a good idea to try to surprise them before they know that the Muslims see them, and to see what their deal is and where they stand and what they're about and all of that. So they've got their camp, and some guy comes into the camp, and he finds Ammar bin Yasir, and he knows his story, because Ammar became a famous person, radiallahu anh. So he goes to him, he said, well, alhamdulillah, I've become Muslim, and I'm trying to escape from my people, because, I don't know why they're stuck in hating Muslims and all this, and continuing this problem with Muslims. I just want to, make migration and be a believer and all that. So then, in the morning, Khalid starts his, hisar. He says, everybody, let's surround their camp, and let's see what they're about, and, see if they're a military or what. Let's make sure we protect ourselves and put them in a position where they cannot fight us. So they do that, and then Khalid is like, who's that guy? And now Ammar is like, this is a man, I have given him safety because he has come to me as a Muslim. Khalid did not believe him. Khalid said, he's just saying that, the thinking process, it's a political move. He saw us, he found us. Now he knows that, we're here and we have our military, and he just wants safety. Ammar said, no, that's not correct. Khalid has never been spoken to like this before. But Ammar, even though he was historically a slave, Khalid being some noble, respected warrior of Quraysh, right? And he's like, I'm the Prophet made me the general of this army, and you're telling me? He said, yes, I'm telling you you're wrong. And this man is a Muslim, and I have given him safety. He's staying with us. We can deal with the rest of them as you like, Amir. Khalid was very upset and used some pretty harsh words. He said, we will go to the Prophet ﷺ and see what he says. So they figure out the problem, whatever. I think they took some of the military characters as, prisoners of war or whatever, and then they come back to the Prophet ﷺ. And they are telling him what happened, and Ammar says, this is our Muslim brother, so-and-so, he doesn't mention his name, and he says, mashallah, he says, okay, and of course, Khalid, we're going to give him protection and safety. And Khalid said, no, but this slave, he was disrespectful to me, and he did not listen to me, and he did not ask my opinion, and made a decision on behalf of the Muslim army without my knowledge. So then he told him, while it is correct that we take him in and that is the right position, Ammar, if you would please, next time when you're on a thing and you have this situation, take the guy, go to Khalid, and then make the case, and then Khalid makes the decision because he's the Amir. He's Wali al-Amr. He's the one that makes these decisions in the military. So he has a thing. So then he said, Sami'na wa ata'na. Okay, Ya Rasulullah. Then they go away. And then as they're walking away, Ammar uses some very harsh language to Khalid again. You think you're this and that, you just became Muslim and this and all of that. And then Khalid said to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if you were not here, I would destroy this slave. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man yasubbu Ammaran yasubbuhu Allah. وَمَنْ يَغْضَبْ عَلَى عَمَّارٍ غَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. A whole transformation of the mentality of tribal Arabia, emphasized with strength and power, with no question, with no hesitation. He said, whoever insults Ammar, even though Ammar just insulted him, but the Prophet ﷺ knows he has a right in what he's doing. For all the things Khalid has said. We're not saying that bad languages, but the situation is. And then Khalid threatening him and never apologizing. Khalid does not apologize to him before this. And he says, whoever insults Ammar, Allah will insult him. Meaning he will punish him. Whoever is angry at Ammar, God is angry with him. What did Khalid ibn al-Walid do? He took him and embraced him. He said, Irda anni. He said, please Ammar, be pleased with me. I'm sorry. I have done wrong. The whole system, individuals of great rapport and respect are being completely transformed here. This is miraculous in and of itself. A guy who comes reciting language, and then whole society is changed and transformed, and certain characters Within a very short time, just imagine, Khalid bin Walid here is now still only, not even a year Muslim. Not even a year. So think about how long we've been Muslim. I'm not any Khalid here. Even with what he said before, look at how he responded like that. When the Prophet said, he didn't say, Ya Rasulullah, and this and carry on. No, he knew. Now, I'm for sure. And what should, again, the testimony is Khalid's faith. After all he's done, he's killed many Muslims, man. Khalid has killed many Muslims. And now he is being verbally abusive and disrespectful to a Muslim with great priority and great respect and great history in the Muslim community. So even though Ammar got mad and responded in a way that's probably not the best way, still the Prophet ﷺ is looking at it in terms of Khalid needs to learn this lesson. And Ammar is pushing that lesson on him, and alhamdulillah the circumstances came for him to learn it as a result of Ammar's actions. Subhan al-Hakim. When you look at the wisdom of God in all of this, Inna ma'al usri yusra. There's always something good to find out of bad situations and people and circumstances. So guess what ayah was revealed? Who can guess it? We just told you the story. Now what ayah was revealed about this? يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا. Says, O you who believe, obey God, obey the messenger, and those in authority among you. Did you notice a difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the three?
Again, add the word obey.
Allah did not say obey before those in authority among you.
Yeah.
Why? Because obedience to them is dependent upon obedience to Allah. And the correct opinion of someone who says, I'm a believer, is that they should be accepted as a believer. Under no circumstances should that be questioned. So I'm a believer. Now if he says, I'm a believer and I worship Jesus at the church on Sunday, okay, well then that's not, you know what I'm saying? But he says, I'm Muslim and I'm like you and we're all the same here. We're Muslim. You have to accept them. Okay? And so, then it says, if you truly have faith in God on the last day, that is the best way and the best interpretation of a matter. Meaning what? Even if you have authority, you should be respected for your authority, as the Prophet ﷺ said. It was the correct course of action for Ammar, rather than to take that he was wrong in forcing the decision on his own, even though it's the correct decision, but it was not the right way. He needed to go take that man to Khalid and say, Ya Amir, O respected general of the army, this man has come as a Muslim and we're accepting him as a migrant and as a Muslim, and we need your blessing in this. Okay? Now, if then Khalid says, well, I disagree, because Allah is protecting Khalid from his later ghayur, his pride of his opinion and all of that. So he has to now, if it's a matter of divine law, they have to go back to the Prophet ﷺ and ask him before taking a final decision, so that the people in authority will not make mistakes with a lack of knowledge of revelation. You see what I'm saying? So that's today. So here's where the thing is. This ayah, it applies for parents, for, scholars, imams, all that kind of stuff. It does not apply when there is a greater harm to you with governments. If your government is going to cause serious harm to you because you are telling them that they are doing something wrong, you should not create a problem for yourself. But if you have a reasonable assumption that it's best to try to remind and bring people back to the Quran and the Sunnah, and to try to guide people are generally committed to that, then you should bring that to light. So this is that whole debate. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this thing that some people go around promoting this concept that you have to stick to a legal school of thought. Have you heard this? You must be Shafi'i or Hanafi or Maliki, something like this, okay? And if you are born into that, or became committed to that after converting or after figuring out seriousness in religion, now you're stuck. You're bound by that. No. Actually, nobody ever taught this, by the way. This is a very recent concept. This is a very, very modern way of looking at things. Right? So, and Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi'i all have statements that are well established in their own books, in their own writings, by their own mouths, that would tell you that this is not what they're teaching. So, if I'm following something, I'll give you one example. I was with some brothers, and we were traveling together to try to make da'wah and all of this. And we were reading from Riyadh al-Salihin after Maghrib one night, and we read many hadiths, and one of them said, there is no sunnahs to be prayed after an iqamah is made for the fard salah. It's in the sunan of Sahih Muslim. So I was like, okay, and so we said, you don't pray a sunnah and all. So we all sat there, everything was fine. There was like 10, 12 of us sitting there, okay. Next morning, Fajr, we all wake up, and I'm praying Fajr, and the Salah has started, and two of the brothers in the group back there praying sunnahs, because they're not part of any line. They're back there praying sunnahs. And I noticed that, and I thought that was very strange. So after the Salah, I went to the brother, I said, and at that time I was in my second year of being involved in the mosque, like my third year of being a Muslim, so I'm still quite fresh. So maybe there's something I missed. So I said, brother, I thought we read last night this hadith that says you should not be praying a sunnah prayer after. He said, well, other than Fajr, that's correct. But Fajr is an exception. So I said, where does it say that in the hadith? He said, well, it doesn't say so. I'm sure it says so in another hadith. I said, can you show me that hadith? He said, no. I said, have you seen the hadith? He said, no. I said, how do you know that's a hadith? He said, well, our school of thought, we were taught, it says this, that Fajr is so important, the sunnah, that even if you have to pray it while the people are praying, you should do that. So I said, okay. And then I said, well, I saw some other brothers at one time at the mosque. After Fajr got done, the brother stood up and prayed 2 rakats. And I asked him, somebody told me, you're not supposed to pray. And then he pulled out the same book we were studying, Riyadh al-Salihin, and it said that the Prophet ﷺ, he saw a man praying after Fajr, and then he asked him, what are you doing? Has Fajr become 4 rakats? And then the guy said, no, I was making up my sunnah, I came late, and so I said, it seemed like that solves the problem. He's like, no, that's not right. And I said, based on what? And so he's saying, my school of thought and the imam that we have, he knows. And we are just ignorant, simple people here. No, I'm dead. This is the thought. This is the way it is. This is not like any form of my own. No, this is how he thinks, and this is the thought process. So, needless to say, after studying Sharia, I found that, that thought process is not correct. You as a believer said, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. It says it in the ayah here. And that's what Ammar bin Yasir, in the story from which the ayah was revealed, he was basing what he was telling Khalid bin Walid, no matter how powerful and Quraysh he is, because he knows Allah and His Messenger are above him. No matter what kind of Amir he is, that everybody looks up to. He's the Amir. That means nothing to me. And so, other than the Prophet ﷺ, so one time somebody challenged Imam Malik. Imam Malik had been studying for decades with many great scholars all over Medina. At this point, he became known as the Imam of Ahl al-Medina, of Dar al-Hijrah. Imam Zuhri and others have passed away, and there's really no prominent scholars from the Tabi'in that he learned from, and he's seen as the top. So everybody's listening to him, and he concluded a different ruling than the great Imam Zuhri who came before him, who was his teacher. And so somebody in the crowd, an elder person, older than Imam Malik, obviously, the way they think, the younger one probably wouldn't say it. Even though he's asking a question in fiqh, he should. Right? So he asked him, he said, how could you make this opinion? When your own teacher, the great teacher of the previous generation, Imam Zuhri, said otherwise. He said, كُلٌّ يُؤْخَذُ مِنْ قَوْلِهِ وَيُرَدْ إِلَّا صَاحِبْ هَذَا الْقَبْرِ. And he pointed at the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, any one of us, you can take our opinion or not follow it, except for the one in the grave over there, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in the Masjid al-Nabawi. So, if you come to find a hadith that's authentic, you should follow that over an opinion. Now, that being said, let me make the disclaimer to defend our brothers and their thought process to a certain degree, to the fair degree. Maybe there are many ayahs and hadiths on the subject that you don't know. But you should ask. This idea of layman. Have you heard this term, layman? It's a Christian and Jewish term. Actually, all Muslims are on a different level of ilm. الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ. And when the Quran says al-ulama, it's not talking about some guy with a PhD in Sharia. That's not what, that didn't exist. Does Abu Bakr have a PhD in Sharia? Did he study fiqh or usul al-fiqh or any of these things? None of it. He didn't have any background in these organized methodologies of Islamic sciences because they didn't exist. All he had was whatever he knew from the Quran and Sunnah, and he had a very tight, deep connection, linguistically, experience-based to that. So he was a scholar himself, no question about that, without the degree in the paper, the stamp and all that. So, you should learn. All Muslims should be trying to learn. This idea that the religion is codified in a book, and I learned it as a kid, and now I'm Muslim, alhamdulillah. That attitude is very problematic. We should not accept that. This attitude, by the way, is a source of a lot of the problems in the Muslim world. And the idea that we should not ask scholars is also incorrect. Because there's something, like I have to constantly remind people, and I'm going to do it again. Just because I'm imam and I study with the scholars and I have this scholarly knowledge of the religion and its theology does not make me above your question or above your perspective knowledge. Maybe on this issue, you know something I don't know. It could be, for sure. It's happened. So you should always feel comfortable to say to me or any other person of knowledge or to your parent, with respect, not try to attack or be abusive to anyone, ever. I'm sorry, that what you said, I have a hard time with, I'm having a hard time understanding that, or it's not what I understood, or that seems wrong, or can you explain that more? That's all normal thought process. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Whether they're in front of you telling you something, or you don't know and you have to find them, the ayah is the same. Go ask and seek the knowledge from the people of the remembrance of knowledge if you don't know the matter. And if you're not clear on it. To ask a question because you're trying to prove your point or you think yourself knowledgeable and you're going to keep nitpicking and trying to get you to, because it's your point, that's sinful. But to ask because you genuinely don't understand or you're having a hard time understanding the basis for it, you should ask until it's clear to you. And you should have no problem saying whatever you know when it's from the Quran and the Sunnah. So is that clear?
Yeah.
Did I say anything? Yes, sister. Jazakallah khair.
Would you let us know what ayah and what surah you were talking
This Surah Nisaa, all of these. This one's in the middle of Surah Nisaa. To be honest with you, I did not write this one down. It's
Okay.
it's in the middle. The servant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Thawban ibn Bujdud, a Yemeni slave that ended up with some people of the Sahaba, and he embraced Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ met him and was very impressed by his character and everything, and he just bought him and let him free. Which was the general practice of the Prophet and Abu Bakr and Umar and others. Uthman and Affan let go so many. Abdurrahman and all, so many. They would buy them and let them go. So he let him go. He said, if you want to go back to Yemen, he was like, we can give you a horse and some things, you go. He was like, to be honest with you, I've been away for a while. I don't really know where to go. And I really like the believer. I'm a Muslim. I want to stay here with you guys. And the Prophet ﷺ said, that would honor us. He said, As a matter of fact, if you choose to stay, you can stay as a member of my household. We all wish we were this guy. To be a servant in the household of the Prophet ﷺ, this is the jackpot. So he said, Allahu Akbar. Done. It's a deal. So Thawban stays in the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and he cleans up and takes care of things and, protects it when nobody's around and things like that. And so when, the Prophet ﷺ, he travels, he does, he has to go these things, those things, he has to go here and there and all this. So one time he comes back and he sees Thawban, he's sitting there. And Thawban is looking very, sad and upset and, and he said, Thawban, is everything okay? Actually, no, the hadith says Aisha is asking him, are you okay? And he was like, the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet comes. He said, you're always gone and I miss you so much. I really miss you. All the times you're gone, I was thinking about you. And here's what I got to thinking in my mind. So I was so happy to come and stay because you said I'd be in your house. That made the decision clear for me. Other than that, I didn't know what I was doing financially and all that kind of stuff. But now, you're saying I can stay in your house and I'm in your household. So I was all about it. But you're gone most of the time. And I'm very sad. And then I started thinking, you're the Prophet. And we know there are levels of heaven. So when you die, for permanently, I will be on some low level if I make it into heaven. And you'll be up there. So you should see, I will have lost you. This is how he's thinking. That's how he thinks. How do we think? How much do we pick up Bukhari and read through it? How many different seerah books did we read? How much do we really love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. Because that's half of our declaration of faith. It should be half of our whole entire identity is greatly affected by this man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he buckled down and the sweat on his brow, and then the ayah comes down. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. The ayah comes down. Those who live their life in devoted obedience to Allah and His Messenger, they will be in heaven with the prophets, with those very deeply sincere, close people to the prophets, with the martyrs, and with the righteous people among the best of the people. And how great is that of companionship to have? So now the believers understood that, yes, so that's a lot of people can understand about levels of heaven, and people have very different ideas about what it really means. ذَلِكَ فَضْلٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. This concept of fadlullah, this concept of ridwanullah, وَرِضْوَانُ akbar. So here in this world, we're kind of stuck on stuff. We're in a capitalist society. We think of things in terms of stuff, things. If you really break it down, stuff is not going to make you happy, and there are many millionaires and people who are miserable on drugs because their stuff isn't making them happy. In heaven, everybody gets whatever they want. There is no, on this level they got, mashallah, really good buffet. Oh, his palace is huge. I can never have a palace. No, it says about the people of heaven, lahum, all of those, ma yasha'un, whatever they want, whatever pops in their head and they can creatively think of. You're an artist in your paradise, do as you like. But that will not be what's most important to you. That will be something to do as a hobby. What will be most important to you is to see God and to know He is pleased with you. And the levels is a level of respect and precedence that everybody knows the other one has, and no one is jealous. Everybody is understanding that that person earned their place by their deep connection to the one that they were connected to, and so therefore they are closer in this eternity as they were in the test we lived in before. It makes perfect sense. So, can we go hang out with the Prophet ﷺ? Yes. We'll go out there and hang out with him and look at Allah together and all of these things. And we can come back and be with our family and enjoy our artistry that we've made in Jannatin Arduha Ka'ard as-Sama'i wal-Ard. That we have our own universe that we've created and we are dealing with. So, alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So that is inshallah our talk. I think it's time now for Salat al-Isha. Is there any questions on this? No? Alhamdulillah. So inshallah I think, some food for thought for all of us, myself included. My ears are very close to my mouth. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك